Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name's Bob, I'll be your host. This video is the first video in my quick look at Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is the most current edition out right now. 5th edition has brought some of the players that left due to the way 4th edition was left out back into the game. But a lot of them stayed with where they went, Pathfinder, earlier editions, that kind of thing. So let's just go ahead and get into this. To play this game, you're going to want a copy of all three core rulebooks, which consist of the Player's Handbook, which is what we will talk about in this video, the Dungeon Master's Guide, which we will talk about in the next video, and the Monster Manual, which we will also talk about in the next video. You'll also need a full set of dice, which consist of a 20-sided die, a 12-sided die, preferably two 10-sided dice for rolling both percentiles and tens, an 8-sided die, a 6-sided die, and a 4-sided die. The Player's Handbook has 316 pages in it and a copyright of 2014. It was published by Wizards of the Coast, and it pretty much has everything you'll need to make and maintain a character for this edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The artwork in this book is pretty good. I like the artwork in this edition of Dungeons & Dragons. So let's go ahead and look at that artwork now. This is the first picture we see when we first open the book. Most of the artwork in this book is in full color, while other pictures are in black and white. Some of the pictures in this book are small and take up little space, while others take up the entire page. Most of the artwork in this book is really good, but I included the picture of this halfling because this is the creepiest halfling I've ever seen. The book is broken up into three parts. Part 1 covers character creation, how to build your character. Part 2 is for playing the game. It consists of some of the rules players need to know, combat, rounds, turns, that kind of thing. And then the third part is all the rules you need for magic. So let's look at the different parts of this book. In the first part, character creation, it gives you the rules to roll your attributes, which consist of strength, which is how physically strong your character is, how much he can lift and so forth. Dexterity, which is how nimble your character is, his hand-eye coordination, how well he moves. Constitution, which is pretty much how healthy your character is, how he deals with diseases and so forth. Intelligence, which is your character's pretty much how smart you are, and deals with remembering things and so forth. Wisdom is pretty much self-explanatory. It's pretty much just how wise your character is, how gullible, that kind of thing. Your charisma is how likable your character is, how good he is at leadership and stuff like that. The book has a few ways of generating attributes in this edition. You can roll your attributes, which consist of rolling 4 6-sided dice and adding the 3 highest rolls together to come up with your attributes. You can use a standard array, which is an array of attributes already generated for you. You just place them, or a point buy. After that, you'll want to pick a race for your character. The races in this edition uses all the classical races and some of the races that were introduced as player character races in 4th edition, which is kind of cool. The races are dwarf, elf, halfling, human, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, and tiefling. After you pick your race, you'll want to pick a class. The classes for this edition consist of the barbarian, the bard, the cleric, the fighter, the monk, the ranger, the rogue, the sorcerer, the warlock, and the wizard. Each of the classes have a kind of path or road you can take after you achieve a certain level. Some of them you can pick at first level, but a lot of them you have to hit level 3 or so forth in order to pick your path, which is kind of neat. Gives your character a little bit of distinction. They've also included something new in this edition for your background. You can pick a background for your character, and it gives you pretty much an idea of where your character has come from and stuff. Like, you can pick the acolyte, the charlatan, the criminal, the entertainer, the guild artisan, the hermit, the noble, the outlander, the sage, the sailor, the soldier, or the urchin. And these give you a kind of idea of the kind of background your characters come from, and gives you a few traits that you can randomly roll to help round out your character, such as a personality trait, an ideal, a bond, and a flaw. It also gives you some more skills that your character will be proficient in, and starting equipment and stuff like that. The alignments in this game have gone back to the classic alignments of Dungeons & Dragons, which give you 3 main alignments, which are lawful, neutral, and chaotic, each of which are broken down into 3 smaller alignments: good, neutral, and evil. They've also added something called inspiration in this game. Inspiration is something that your game master can reward you for playing in character. Once you have inspiration, you can spend it when you have a roll to make, such as an attack roll or a saving throw, and it will give you advantage in that roll. Advantage and disadvantage is something they've also added to this game. When you have an advantage in a roll, you roll 2 20-sided dice, and you get to keep the higher of the 2 rolls. If you have disadvantage, it works in the exact opposite. You roll the 2 dice, and you keep the smaller of the 2 rolls. There are also feats in this edition, but feats are an optional rule. When a player gains a level that he can normally gain an ability bonus, he can instead sacrifice that and take a feat instead. After that, you can pick your equipment. There is a good equipment section in this edition, and it has everything to arm and equip your character for whatever he may do. After that, we'll get into Part 2. Part 2 is pretty much the rules. It gives, in this book, everything that your characters, that you the player will need to know for actually playing the game, mostly centering around combat rules. And it's pretty detailed for giving you what you need to know. After that, we have the part on magic, which goes through describing how magic works in the game and has lists for the different categories of spellcasters and descriptions for all the spells in this book. In this edition, they've gone back to having spell slots, which is how they've always done it before 4th edition. But they did keep the rituals from 4th edition in this edition, which means certain spells, if listed as such, instead of using a spell slot, they can be cast as ritual. Ritual takes more time and stuff, but it doesn't spend one of your spells per day or anything like that, which is pretty cool, I think. After that, there are 4 appendixes at the end of this book. The first one discusses the different conditions that your character can find himself in, such as stunned or blinded or deafened, and so forth. The next appendix gives lists of the gods and different campaign settings that D&D has come out with over the years, such as the gods of Greyhawk, the gods of Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, so forth. It also gives a list of pantheons that you'd find looking into Earth's history, such as the Greek gods, the Norse gods, and so forth. The third appendix discusses the planes a little bit and gives you an idea of how the planes work in this edition of D&D. It's just a quick look at that. The last appendix in this book is on creatures that you could probably summon with your spells or morph into using different spells. All in all, it's a pretty good book. If you still haven't had a chance to look at 5th edition, you should. It's a pretty good edition. I really like it. But that's all I'm going to say about the Player's Handbook for now. We'll look at the other 2 books in this edition in the next video. I hope you return for that.